Sometimes the most ordinary moments become extraordinary turning points. Sometimes a single act of cruelty becomes the catalyst for something so powerful that it transforms not just one life, but countless others. This is the story of Maya Chun, a 28-year-old immigrant who thought her biggest worry was making rent on her tiny apartment in downtown Seattle. She had no idea that a seemingly random act of destruction would become the foundation of a movement that would reach millions of people around the world. What started as 3 destroyed handbags on a rainy Tuesday morning would end up changing laws, inspiring a generation, and proving that sometimes the most devastating moments carry within them the seeds of the most beautiful transformations. This is not just a story about resilience. This is a story about what happens when someone refuses to let others define their worth, and how that refusal can ripple outward in ways no one could ever predict. The bags were nothing special, Maya would later tell reporters. One was a worn leather tote her grandmother had given her before she left China. Another was a canvas messenger bag she'd bought at a thrift store for $5. The third was a small evening purse she'd saved up for months to buy, dreaming of the day she might have somewhere fancy enough to carry it. Together, they represented not just her belongings, but her dreams, her memories, and her hope for a future she was building one difficult day at a time. But sometimes the universe has bigger plans than we can imagine. Sometimes destruction is just the clearing away of what was to make room for what's meant to be. Maya's story begins with 3 ruined bags and a choice that would echo far beyond anything she could have dreamed. The question isn't what they destroyed that day. The question is what they accidentally helped create. Maya Chun had always been an early riser, but that Tuesday morning in March, she woke up with an unusual sense of excitement. After 3 months of interviews and rejections, she finally had a call back for a marketing position at a tech startup downtown. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough for her to move out of her cramped studio apartment and maybe even send some money back to her parents in Beijing. She stood in front of her tiny closet, carefully selecting her outfit. The interview was at 10, which gave her enough time to stop by the community college where she taught English as a second language twice a week. Her students there meant everything to her. Most of them were recent immigrants like herself, struggling to build new lives in a country that often felt unwelcoming. Teaching them gave her purpose beyond just surviving. Maya chose her best blazer, a navy blue one she'd found at a consignment shop, and paired it with black pants that she'd hemmed herself. She packed her leather tote carefully with her laptop, resume copies, and a small gift for Mrs. Rodriguez, one of her elderly students who had been making remarkable progress with her pronunciation. The canvas messenger bag held her teaching materials, and the small evening purse contained her lucky pen, the one her grandmother had sent her with a note that said, "For signing important papers in your new country." The morning air was crisp as Maya walked to the bus stop, her 3 bags arranged carefully across her shoulders. She always felt a bit self-conscious carrying so much, but everything served a purpose. The leather tote gave her confidence in professional settings. The messenger bag was practical for teaching. The evening purse reminded her that someday she would have reasons to dress up and celebrate. At the community college, Maya's classroom was buzzing with nervous energy. Today was the day her students would present their final projects, personal stories about their journeys to America. She had spent weeks helping them organize their thoughts and practice their presentations. For many of them, this would be the first time they had spoken publicly about their experiences. Mrs. Rodriguez went first, telling the story of leaving El Salvador with her 2 young children, walking for weeks through Mexico, and finally reaching the border with nothing but hope and determination. Her English was halting but clear, and when she finished, the room erupted in applause. Maya felt tears in her eyes as she hugged the older woman. Next was Ahmad, a former engineer from Syria who now worked nights cleaning office buildings while studying to recertify his engineering degree. He spoke about the libraries he had built in refugee camps and his dream of designing sustainable housing for displaced families. His voice shook as he described leaving his elderly parents behind, but his determination was evident in every word. One by one, her students shared their stories. There was Elena from Colombia, who had started a small catering business from her apartment kitchen. There was David from Nigeria, who was studying to become a nurse while supporting 3 children on his own. Each story was a testament to human resilience and the power of hope. Maya realized that these presentations had become more than just a class assignment. Her students were reclaiming their narratives, refusing to be defined by their struggles. They were declaring that they belonged here, that their dreams mattered, that their contributions had value. After class, Maya hurried to catch the bus downtown. She felt energized by her students' courage and ready to channel that same confidence into her interview. The bus was crowded, and she had to stand, carefully balancing her bags while holding onto the rail. She reviewed her talking points in her mind, thinking about how to present her unconventional background as a strength rather than a liability. The tech startup was located in a renovated warehouse in the Arts District. Maya had researched the company extensively and was impressed by their mission to create digital tools that helped small businesses succeed. The position was for a marketing coordinator who would help develop outreach strategies for immigrant entrepreneurs. It felt like the perfect intersection of her marketing degree and her passion for helping newcomers build successful lives. Maya arrived 15 minutes early and spent the time in a nearby coffee shop, reviewing her notes one last time. She ordered a small green tea and sat by the window, watching people hurry past on the sidewalk below. Everyone seemed to have somewhere important to be, some purpose driving them forward. Soon, she hoped, she would be one of them. At exactly 10 o'clock, Maya walked into the building's lobby. The receptionist, a young man with kind eyes and a warm smile, directed her to the 3rd floor. The elevator was small and old-fashioned, with mirrors on 3 sides. Maya checked her appearance one last time, adjusting her blazer and making sure her bags were arranged neatly. The office was exactly what she had expected. Exposed brick walls, standing desks scattered throughout an open floor plan, and the gentle hum of creative energy. Employees clustered around whiteboards covered in colorful sticky notes and flowcharts. The walls were decorated with inspirational quotes and photos of successful small business owners from around the world. Sarah Martinez, the hiring manager, greeted Maya with a firm handshake and led her to a small conference room. Sarah was probably in her early 30s with short curly hair and an easy laugh. She wore jeans and a casual sweater, which put Maya at ease immediately. "I have to tell you," Sarah said as they settled into their chairs, "your application really stood out to us. Your combination of marketing education and real-world experience working with immigrant communities is exactly what we're looking for." Maya felt a rush of confidence. "Thank you. I'm really excited about the possibility of working here. Your company's mission resonates deeply with my own values and experiences." The interview flowed naturally. Sarah asked thoughtful questions about Maya's teaching experience and how she might apply those communication skills to marketing challenges. Maya shared stories about helping her students develop business plans and navigate bureaucratic processes. She described the small businesses she had seen succeed against all odds and the common barriers that prevented others from thriving. "We're particularly interested in developing partnerships with community organizations," Sarah explained. "Someone with your background could help us build authentic relationships rather than just transactional ones." Maya's mind raced with possibilities. She could already envision workshops that combined business development with language skills, marketing campaigns that celebrated immigrant success stories, and digital tools that made bureaucratic processes more accessible to non-native speakers. The interview lasted nearly an hour, and Maya felt increasingly confident with each question. This wasn't just a job opportunity. It was a chance to scale her impact and help more people than she ever could in a single classroom. "I'd like you to meet our team lead," Sarah said finally. "Are you available to stay for a few more minutes?" Maya nodded enthusiastically and followed Sarah through the office to another conference room. As they walked, she noticed how collaborative the environment seemed. People moved freely between workstations, sharing ideas and building on each other's suggestions. It reminded her of her classroom at its best, when her students supported each other's learning and celebrated each other's progress. The team lead, Marcus Johnson, was a tall man with an infectious laugh and an obvious passion for the company's work. He asked Maya to walk through a hypothetical marketing challenge, and she found herself drawing on stories from her teaching experience to illustrate her strategic thinking. "Here's what I love about your approach," Marcus said when she finished. "You're not just thinking about demographics or market segments. You're thinking about real people with real dreams facing real obstacles." Maya felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was exactly the kind of work she had dreamed of doing. After the second interview, Sarah walked her back to the elevator. "We'll be in touch within the next few days," Sarah promised. "But I want you to know that everyone you've met today has been impressed." Maya thanked her and stepped into the elevator, barely containing her excitement. As the doors closed, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror and smiled. She looked like someone who belonged here, someone whose ideas mattered, someone who was ready to build something important. The elevator opened on the ground floor, and Maya walked across the lobby toward the exit. She pushed through the glass doors and stepped on a sidewalk, already planning how she would celebrate if she got the job. Maybe she would take her students out for coffee and tell them about her interview. Maybe she would call her parents and share the good news. Maybe she would finally buy herself a proper interview bag to replace her collection of mismatched purses and totes. Maya was so lost in thought that she almost didn't notice the group of teenagers standing near the corner. There were 4 of them, probably high school age, and they seemed to be watching her with unusual interest. Something about their body language made her slightly uncomfortable, but she told herself she was being paranoid. This was a busy area in broad daylight. Nothing bad could happen here. She was wrong. As Maya approached the bus stop, one of the teenagers stepped into her path. "Hey," he said, his voice carrying an edge that made her stomach clench. "Nice bags. Where'd you steal them from?" Maya felt her face flush with anger and embarrassment. She tried to step around him, but another teenager moved to block her way. "I asked you a question," the first boy said louder this time. "Please let me pass," Maya said, keeping her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. "I don't want any trouble." "Oh, she doesn't want any trouble," the third teenager mocked, affecting an exaggerated accent. "Maybe you should have thought of that before you decided to steal jobs from real Americans." Maya's hands tightened on her bag straps. She had faced prejudice before, but never anything this direct, this public. Other people were walking past, but no one seemed interested in intervening. She was on her own. "These bags are mine," she said firmly. "I haven't stolen anything from anyone." The leader of the group, a boy with bleached hair and angry eyes, stepped closer. "Yeah? Prove it. Show us the receipts." Maya's heart pounded. She didn't carry receipts for bags she had owned for years. The leather tote had been a gift. The messenger bag was from a thrift store that probably didn't even exist anymore. The evening purse had been a cash purchase months ago. "I don't need to prove anything to you," she said, her voice stronger now. "Please move out of my way." That's when everything changed. The bleached-haired boy grabbed her leather tote and yanked it hard, breaking the strap. Maya stumbled backward, and the other teenagers seemed to take this as a signal. Before she could react, they had grabbed her other bags and were pulling at them viciously. "Stop!" Maya cried out, but her voice was lost in the sound of tearing fabric and breaking zippers. She tried to hold on to her bags, but there were too many hands grabbing and pulling and destroying. In less than 30 seconds, it was over. Her leather tote lay in pieces on the sidewalk, its contents scattered across the concrete. Her messenger bag had been torn completely in half, her teaching materials mixing with dirt and discarded cigarette butts. Her evening purse had been stomped on until the delicate beading was ground into the pavement. The teenagers were gone, disappearing around the corner, as quickly as they had appeared. Maya stood alone on the sidewalk, surrounded by the wreckage of her belongings and her dignity. Her laptop screen was cracked. Her resume copies were dirty and torn. Her grandmother's lucky pen was nowhere to be seen. People walked past, carefully avoiding eye contact. A few glanced at the mess on the sidewalk with mild curiosity, but no one stopped to help. Maya knelt down and began gathering her scattered possessions, her hands shaking with shock and rage and a deep, aching sadness that seemed to come from somewhere much deeper than this moment. This wasn't just about the bags, though she mourned each one. The leather tote had carried her dreams through every job interview, every important meeting, every moment when she needed to feel professional and capable. The messenger bag had held her teaching materials, the tools she used to help other immigrants find their voices in a new language. The evening purse had represented hope, the belief that someday she would have occasions worth celebrating. But as Maya sat on that sidewalk, surrounded by the pieces of her destroyed belongings, something else began to grow alongside her anger and sadness. It was a determination that surprised her with its intensity. Those teenagers had meant to humiliate her, to make her feel small and unwelcome and powerless. Instead, they had awakened something in her that she hadn't even known was there. Maya Chun was about to discover that sometimes the worst moments of our lives become the launching pad for the best chapters of our stories. Sometimes destruction is just clearing the ground for something new to grow. And sometimes the people who try to break us accidentally show us just how strong we really are. Maya sat on her apartment floor that evening, surrounded by the remnants of her destroyed bags and a growing pile of tissues. She had managed to salvage some of her belongings, but everything felt contaminated by the experience. Her laptop was badly damaged, several important documents were beyond repair, and her teaching materials would need to be completely rebuilt. The physical losses were devastating enough, but it was the emotional impact that left her feeling most broken. The attack had been so sudden, so vicious, and so public. The memory of standing helplessly on that sidewalk while strangers walked past, deliberately avoiding her eyes, replayed in her mind on an endless loop. Maya had called in sick to her evening tutoring session, something she had never done before. She couldn't imagine facing her students while feeling so fragmented and vulnerable. How could she teach them about finding their voice in a new country when she felt like hers had been stolen? Her phone buzzed with a text from her friend Lisa, a fellow teacher who had become her closest confidant in Seattle. "Haven't heard from you today. Everything okay?" Maya stared at the message for several minutes before typing back. "Bad day. Can you call?" Lisa called immediately, and Maya found herself telling the whole story between tears and angry outbursts. Lisa listened without interruption, occasionally making soft sounds of sympathy and outrage. "Maya, I am so sorry," Lisa said when she finished. "This is absolutely horrible. Have you reported it to the police?" Maya had considered calling the police, but what would she tell them? For teenagers had broken her bags and run away. She hadn't been physically injured. She couldn't identify any of them clearly. It would be her word against nothing. Just another minor incident in a city full of bigger problems. "What's the point?" Maya asked. "They're long gone, and it's not like the police are going to launch a major investigation over some broken handbags." "But it wasn't just about the bags," Lisa insisted. "This was a hate crime, Maya. They targeted you because of your race and immigration status. That's not legal, and it's not acceptable." Maya knew Lisa was right, but the thought of reliving the experience with skeptical police officers felt overwhelming. She just wanted to forget it had ever happened and move on with her life. "Maybe I'll think about it," she said, though they both knew she wouldn't. After they hung up, Maya ordered takeout Chinese food and tried to distract herself with a movie. But every few minutes, her mind would drift back to the interview that morning, to the excitement she had felt about the job opportunity, to how confident and capable she had felt just hours before everything fell apart. The contrast was almost unbearable. In the span of a single day, she had gone from feeling like she was finally building the life she wanted to feeling like a victim, like someone who didn't belong, like someone who could be attacked and humiliated without consequence. Maya woke up the next morning with puffy eyes and a heavy heart, but also with a strange sense of clarity. She looked at the pile of destroyed belongings still scattered across her floor and made a decision that would change everything. Instead of throwing the bags away and trying to forget what happened, Maya was going to document it. She was going to take pictures of every torn strap, every broken zipper, every scattered belonging. She was going to write down exactly what happened, exactly what the teenagers said, exactly how it felt to be attacked for the crime of being different. Maya had always been a writer. In college, she had kept detailed journals about her experiences as an international student. When she first arrived in Seattle, she had written long emails to friends back home, trying to capture the complexity of building a new life in a foreign country. Writing had always been how she processed difficult experiences and made sense of the world around her. But this felt different. This wasn't going to be a private journal entry or a personal email. Maya was going to write this story and share it publicly because she suspected that what happened to her wasn't unique. How many other immigrants had faced similar attacks? How many had suffered in silence, convinced that their experiences didn't matter or that no one would care? Maya spent the morning carefully photographing the destroyed bags from every angle. The leather tote that had been her grandmother's gift looked especially heartbreaking, its elegant lines reduced to torn pieces held together by a few stubborn threads. The messenger bag appeared to have been deliberately shredded, as if the attackers had wanted to inflict maximum damage. The evening purse was the worst of all, its delicate beadings scattered like broken dreams across her apartment floor. As she documented the damage, Maya found herself remembering the stories behind each bag. The leather tote had accompanied her to her first job interview in America, to graduate school orientation, to meetings with immigration lawyers. It had been her armor and her confidence booster, making her feel professional and capable even when she felt anything but. The messenger bag had been her constant companion at the community college. It had carried lesson plans written in 3 languages, homework assignments covered in encouraging notes, and small gifts from students who wanted to thank her for believing in them. This bag had been functional rather than beautiful, but it represented her purpose and her passion. The evening purse had been pure hope. Maya had bought it during a particularly difficult period when she was working 3 part-time jobs and living on ramen noodles. She couldn't afford it, but she needed to believe that someday she would have reasons to carry something beautiful, occasions worth celebrating, a life that included joy as well as struggle. Now all 3 bags were destroyed, but as Maya looked at the photographs on her camera, she realized that their stories hadn't ended. In fact, their most important chapter was just beginning. Maya opened her laptop, grateful that despite the cracked screen, it was still functional. She began to write, starting with the moment she woke up that Tuesday morning feeling excited about her interview, and ending with sitting alone on the sidewalk, surrounded by the ruins of her belongings and her dignity. She wrote about the fear she felt when the teenagers blocked her path, the shock of being attacked so suddenly and viciously, the humiliation of watching strangers walk past without helping. But she also wrote about the determination that was growing inside her, the refusal to let this incident define her or diminish her dreams. The first draft was raw and angry, filled with hurt and confusion. Maya set it aside and went for a walk around her neighborhood, needing to clear her head before revising. As she walked, she noticed things she had never paid attention to before. The way some people crossed the street when they saw her coming, the suspicious looks from shop owners, the subtle but persistent message that she didn't quite belong. Had this harassment always been there, or was she just noticing it now because her defenses were down? Maya realized that the attack hadn't created these problems. It had simply made them impossible to ignore. When she returned home, Maya rewrote her story with more nuance and less anger. She included context about her students at the community college, about the challenges facing immigrant communities, about the daily microaggressions that made people feel unwelcome in their new home. She wrote about the dreams that had brought her to America and the obstacles she faced in pursuing them. Most importantly, Maya wrote about resilience. She described her students' courage in sharing their stories, their determination to build better lives despite facing constant obstacles. She wrote about the immigrant business owners she had met who created jobs and contributed to their communities despite being told they didn't belong. She wrote about the strength it took to leave everything familiar behind and start over in a new country. By evening, Maya had a 2,000-word piece that she was proud of. It was honest about the pain of the attack, while also celebrating the strength of immigrant communities. It was angry but not bitter, hurt but not defeated. Most importantly, it was hopeful. Maya's finger hovered over the Publish button on Medium, a platform she had used before for smaller pieces about language learning and cultural adaptation. Once she published this story, there would be no taking it back. She would be putting herself out there as someone who had been victimized, someone who had suffered, someone who was angry about injustice. But she would also be putting herself out there as someone who refused to be silenced, someone who would speak truth even when it was uncomfortable, someone who believed that her story mattered. Maya clicked publish. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, her story had been shared dozens of times. Comments poured in from other immigrants sharing their own experiences with harassment and discrimination. People offered words of support, expressions of outrage, and, most surprisingly, offers of help. Lisa was the first to call. Maya, I just read your piece. It's incredible. You've captured something that needed to be said. I was scared to publish it, Maya admitted. I didn't want people to see me as a victim or feel sorry for me. That's not how you come across at all, Lisa assured her. You come across as someone who is brave enough to tell the truth, even when the truth is difficult. Over the next few hours, Maya received messages from strangers who had been moved by her story. A lawyer in Portland offered to help her file a police report if she changed her mind. A small business owner in San Francisco wanted to send her new bags to replace the ones that had been destroyed. A group of students at the University of Washington asked if she would speak at their cultural awareness event. But the message that affected Maya most came from one of her own students, Mrs. Rodriguez. The older woman had somehow found the story online and managed to navigate the commenting system to leave a simple message. You taught us to be brave. Now you're being brave too. We are proud of you. Maya stared at that comment until tears blurred her vision. She had written the story thinking about herself, about her own need to process what had happened and reclaim her narrative. She hadn't considered how it might affect her students, how seeing their teachers stand up and speak out might inspire them to find their own voices. Late that night, Maya received an email that would change everything. It was from Sarah Martinez, the hiring manager from the tech startup where she had interviewed just that morning. Maya's heart sank as she opened it, certain that her public story about being targeted for her immigration status had cost her the job opportunity. Instead, Sarah had written, Maya, I just read your piece about yesterday's incident. I'm so sorry that happened to you, and I am inspired by your courage in sharing your story. Your experience reinforces exactly why we need someone with your perspective on our team. We would be honored to offer you the position if you're still interested. Maya read the email 3 times before it fully sank in. Not only had her story not cost her the job, it had apparently convinced them that she was exactly the person they needed. Instead of seeing her as a victim or a troublemaker, they saw her as someone with valuable insights and the courage to speak truth to power. But the email continued. I'd also like to discuss a potential additional project with you. After reading your story, our CEO has been thinking about ways our company could more actively support immigrant entrepreneurs who face discrimination and harassment. Would you be interested in helping us develop some initiatives around that? Maya leaned back in her chair, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in her circumstances. 24 hours ago, she had been sitting on a sidewalk surrounded by the pieces of her destroyed bags, feeling powerless and humiliated. Now she not only had the job she wanted, but also an opportunity to turn her worst experience into something that could help others. She stayed up until nearly 3 in the morning, responding to comments and messages from people who had been touched by her story. Each response felt like a small act of resistance, a refusal to let the teenagers who had attacked her have the last word. Maya finally understood what her grandmother had meant when she gave her that lucky pen for signing important papers in your new country. The pen was gone, destroyed along with her bags, but Maya was about to sign the most important paper of her life, a contract that would allow her to transform her pain into purpose, her victimization into victory. As she drifted off to sleep, Maya thought about her students and the stories they had shared in class the day before. Each of them had faced their own moments of destruction, their own attacks on their dignity and worth. But instead of letting those moments define them, they had used them as fuel for building something better. Maya was about to discover that sometimes the people who try to break us accidentally hand us the tools we need to build something more beautiful than what came before. Sometimes the worst day of your life becomes the first day of your real purpose. And sometimes the bags they destroy become the foundation for carrying dreams bigger than anything you could have imagined. Maya's first day at the tech startup felt surreal. Just 1 week after sitting on a sidewalk surrounded by destroyed belongings, she was walking into a bright, modern office carrying a new laptop bag that had been sent to her by a small business owner who read her story. The bag was beautiful, handcrafted leather with strong stitching and thoughtful details, but more importantly, it came with a note that said, "For carrying your dreams forward." Sarah Martinez welcomed Maya with enthusiasm and immediately introduced her to the team she would be working with. The marketing department consisted of 5 people, all of whom had read her story and expressed genuine excitement about the perspective she would bring to their work. "We've been talking all week about your idea for supporting immigrant entrepreneurs," explained Marcus Johnson, the team lead. "Our CEO wants to make this a major company initiative, and he's asked us to develop a comprehensive proposal." Maya felt a flutter of nervousness mixed with excitement. She had mentioned supporting immigrant businesses almost casually in her response to Sarah's email, thinking it might be a small side project. Now it sounded like they wanted to make it a central part of their mission. "What kind of scope are you thinking about?" Maya asked, settling into her new workspace, which featured a standing desk and a view of the bustling street below. Marcus pulled up a presentation on his laptop. "We're thinking big. Digital literacy workshops for immigrant entrepreneurs. A microloan program for businesses that traditional banks won't fund. Marketing support for companies that face language barriers. Legal clinics for navigating business regulations. Maybe even a documentary series highlighting immigrant success stories." Maya stared at the screen, overwhelmed by the ambition of what they were proposing. This was far beyond anything she had imagined when she wrote her story about 3 destroyed bags. "This is incredible," she said slowly. "But can I ask what sparked all this? I mean, why is the company willing to invest so much in this kind of programming?" Sarah exchanged a look with Marcus before answering. "Honestly, your story has been shared almost 10,000 times in the past week. It's been picked up by major news outlets, immigrant advocacy organizations, and business publications. People are responding to it because you articulated something that a lot of people have experienced but couldn't express." Maya pulled up her Medium account on her computer and gasped. The view count on her story had exploded overnight. The comment section had become a forum where hundreds of immigrants were sharing their own experiences with discrimination and resilience. People were posting photos of their own meaningful belongings that had been destroyed or stolen, but also photos of the businesses they had built, the communities they had created, the successes they had achieved despite facing obstacles. "It's become bigger than just your story," Marcus explained. "It's become a movement. People are using the hashtag #MyBagsMyDreams to share their own experiences and support each other. Our CEO thinks we have an opportunity to be part of something really meaningful here." Maya scrolled through the hashtag on social media, amazed by what she saw. There were stories from Korean shop owners whose windows had been broken during the pandemic. There were photos from Mexican restaurant owners who had faced harassment but kept serving their community. There were posts from Somali entrepreneurs who had built successful businesses despite being told they didn't belong. But there were also stories of hope and triumph. A Syrian refugee who had started a catering business was posting photos of the elaborate wedding cakes she now made for clients across the city. A Vietnamese nail salon owner was sharing pictures of the scholarship fund she had created for immigrant students. An Ethiopian coffee shop owner had posted a video tour of his thriving business, which employed 12 people and had become a gathering place for the local East African community. Each post used the hashtag #MyBagsMyDreams, but Maya realized the bags had become symbolic of something much larger. They represented the dreams people carried, the tools they used to build better lives, the belongings that held meaning beyond their material value. I had no idea it would grow like this, Maya admitted, still scrolling through the endless stream of posts. That's what makes it authentic, Sarah said. You didn't set out to start a movement. You just told your truth, and it resonated with people who needed to hear that they weren't alone. Maya spent her first week at the company developing a comprehensive proposal for what they were calling the Dreams Forward Initiative. She interviewed dozens of immigrant entrepreneurs about the barriers they faced and the support they needed. She researched successful programs in other cities and countries. She worked with the legal team to understand regulatory requirements and funding options. But most importantly, Maya reconnected with her students at the community college and asked for their input. Many of them had small businesses or dreams of starting companies, and their feedback proved invaluable. What we need most is not charity, explained Ahmad, the former Syrian engineer who was working to recertify his credentials while cleaning offices at night. We need opportunity and access. We have skills and ideas and determination. We just need the systems to work with us instead of against us. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had started her catering business from her apartment kitchen, nodded emphatically. When I applied for a small business loan, they asked me questions that made no sense. They wanted to know about my credit history in El Salvador, my business experience before I came here. How do you explain that you had to leave everything behind and start over with nothing? Maya took detailed notes during these conversations, realizing that the challenges facing immigrant entrepreneurs were far more complex than she had initially understood. It wasn't just about language barriers or cultural differences. It was about systemic obstacles that made it nearly impossible for newcomers to access the resources and opportunities that native-born citizens took for granted. Armed with this research, Maya worked with her team to develop a multifaceted program that would address these barriers comprehensively. The digital literacy workshops would teach entrepreneurs how to build websites, manage social media, and navigate online business platforms. The microloan program would provide funding for businesses that banks considered too risky. The marketing support would help companies overcome language barriers and cultural misunderstandings that prevented them from reaching broader markets. But Maya insisted that the program also include something more fundamental: advocacy and policy change. The company would work with local government to streamline business licensing processes, push banks to reconsider their lending criteria, and educate other businesses about the value of immigrant entrepreneurship. We can't just treat the symptoms, Maya argued during a team meeting. We need to address the underlying systems that create these barriers in the first place. The proposal was presented to the company's board of directors on a rainy Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks after Maya started working there. She had prepared extensively, but she still felt nervous as she walked into the sleek conference room where 12 executives sat around a polished table. Maya began her presentation by sharing some of the stories she had collected from immigrant entrepreneurs. She talked about the Vietnamese woman who had created a successful clothing alteration business, but struggled to expand because banks wouldn't recognize her previous experience as a tailor in Saigon. She described the Mexican man who had developed an innovative food truck concept, but couldn't get permits because of bureaucratic obstacles he couldn't navigate without better English skills. These are not stories about people who need handouts, Maya emphasized. These are stories about talented entrepreneurs who are being prevented from contributing fully to our economy because of systemic barriers. She clicked to the next slide, which showed the economic impact of immigrant-owned businesses in their city. Immigrant entrepreneurs create jobs, pay taxes, and strengthen communities. When we remove barriers to their success, everyone benefits. Maya then outlined the Dreams Forward initiative in detail, explaining how each component would address specific obstacles while building on the strengths that immigrant entrepreneurs already possessed. She showed how the program could be measured and evaluated, how it could be scaled to other cities, how it could generate positive publicity and community goodwill for the company. But it was her conclusion that seemed to resonate most with the board members. 3 weeks ago, I was attacked by teenagers who told me I didn't belong here, Maya said, her voice steady and strong. They destroyed my bags because they saw them as symbols of someone who was taking something that didn't belong to her. But those bags represented my dreams, my hard work, my determination to build a better life. She paused, looking around the room at the faces watching her intently. The hashtag #MyBagsMyDreams has shown us that millions of immigrants carry similar dreams in their own metaphorical bags. They bring skills, ideas, determination, and hope to communities across this country. The question is, are we going to help them unpack those bags and build something beautiful, or are we going to let fear and prejudice destroy them on the sidewalk? The room was silent for several moments after Maya finished speaking. Then, the CEO, a man in his 50s with kind eyes and graying hair, began to clap. Soon the entire room was applauding, and Maya felt her heart racing with excitement and relief. This is exactly the kind of initiative our company should be leading, the CEO said when the applause died down. How quickly can we get started? Maya smiled, thinking about her students who would benefit from this program, about the entrepreneurs whose stories she had collected, about the movement that had grown from her moment of destruction into something that could create opportunity for thousands of people. We can start immediately, she said. I already have a list of 50 immigrant entrepreneurs who are ready to participate in our pilot program. Over the next month, Maya threw herself into implementing the Dreams Forward initiative with an energy and passion that surprised even her. She worked 12-hour days, developing curriculum for the digital literacy workshops, interviewing potential microloan recipients, and coordinating with community organizations across the city. The program officially launched 6 weeks after Maya published her original story. The kickoff event was held at the community college where Maya taught, and the response was overwhelming. Nearly 200 people showed up, representing dozens of countries and countless entrepreneurial dreams. Maya stood at the front of the auditorium where she had watched her students give their presentations just weeks before, looking out at faces filled with hope and determination. She thought about the leather tote that had carried her dreams to this very building, about the messenger bag that had held her teaching materials, about the evening purse that had represented her hope for celebrations and success. All 3 bags were gone, destroyed by people who wanted to crush her spirit and diminish her dreams. But standing in front of this crowd of aspiring entrepreneurs, Maya realized that those teenagers had accidentally done her the biggest favor of her life. They had forced her to examine what really mattered, to find her voice, to discover her purpose. 6 weeks ago, some people tried to destroy my bags, Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system. They thought they were destroying my dreams. Instead, they helped me discover that dreams are not things you carry. Dreams are things you build, things you share, things you use to lift others up. She gestured to the crowd in front of her. Today, we are all here carrying our dreams together. And together, we're going to build something that no one can ever destroy. The applause was thunderous, but Maya barely heard it. She was thinking about all the bags that would be filled with business plans and hope in the months to come. She was thinking about the success stories that would emerge from this room. She was thinking about how sometimes the worst moments of our lives become the foundation for the best chapters of our stories. Maya Chun had discovered that when people try to break you, They sometimes accidentally hand you the tools you need to become unbreakable. When they try to destroy your dreams, they sometimes show you how to build dreams that are bigger and stronger than anything you had imagined before. The movement was just beginning. 6 months after the launch of the Dreams Forward initiative, Maya found herself standing in the White House, holding a folder that contained success stories from over 300 immigrant entrepreneurs who had participated in the program. She still couldn't quite believe how quickly things had escalated from a local community project to a national model that was being studied by policymakers across the country. The invitation to Washington, D.C. had come through a series of connections that seemed almost magical in their timing. Dr. Angela Martinez, a policy advisor who had immigrated from Guatemala as a child, had read Maya's original story and followed the growth of the Dreams Forward initiative with interest. When the Department of Commerce began looking for successful models of immigrant entrepreneur support, Dr. Martinez recommended Maya's program as a case study. Maya had spent the previous week preparing her presentation for a congressional subcommittee on small business development. She had updated all the program statistics, gathered testimonials from participants, and worked with her team to create a replication guide that other cities could use to implement similar initiatives. The numbers were impressive. 312 entrepreneurs had completed the digital literacy workshops. 89 had received microloans totaling over $2.3 million, and 156 new businesses had been successfully launched. But Maya knew that behind every statistic was a human story of transformation and hope. There was Maria Santos, who had used her microloan to transform her home-based catering business into a full restaurant that now employed 8 people. Maria had been one of Maya's original students at the community college, and seeing her succeed felt like watching a daughter graduate from college. There was Khalid Hassan, who had leveraged the digital marketing training to expand his auto repair shop's customer base by 400%. His shop now served as an unofficial community center for the local Somali population, and he had started offering free car maintenance workshops for other immigrants. There was Lin Wei, who had used the business development support to launch a tech consulting firm that specialized in helping small businesses adapt to digital platforms. Her company had grown to 12 employees and was being courted by venture capital firms interested in investing in immigrant-led businesses. Each success story reinforced Maya's belief that immigrant entrepreneurs didn't need charity or sympathy. They needed opportunity and support to unleash potential that was already there. The congressional hearing was scheduled for 2 o'clock, but Maya arrived at the Capitol building an hour early, wanting time to compose herself and review her notes one final time. She carried a new leather portfolio, a gift from Maria Santos, who had insisted on handcrafting it herself as a way of saying thank you for the support that had changed her life. As Maya sat in the marble hallway outside the hearing room, she thought about how different this portfolio felt from the bags that had been destroyed 9 months earlier. Those bags had carried her personal dreams and aspirations. This portfolio carried the dreams of hundreds of people who had found the courage to pursue their entrepreneurial visions despite facing significant obstacles. Dr. Martinez found Maya in the hallway and greeted her with a warm smile. "Are you ready for this? I have to warn you, some of these committee members can be pretty intimidating." Maya nodded, feeling more confident than she had expected. "I've been preparing for this my whole life, even before I knew it was possible." The hearing room was smaller than Maya had imagined, with wood-paneled walls and formal portraits of past committee chairs. About 20 people sat in the gallery, including several immigrant entrepreneurs who had flown in from Seattle to support Maya's testimony. She spotted Mrs. Rodriguez in the 3rd row, wearing her best dress and beaming with pride. Representative Janet Williams, the committee chair, called the hearing to order and introduced Maya with a brief summary of the Dreams Forward initiative and its impact. Maya appreciated that the representative emphasized the program's measurable outcomes rather than dwelling on the personal story that had inspired it. "Ms. Chun," Representative Williams began, "your program has attracted national attention for its innovative approach to supporting immigrant entrepreneurs. Can you walk us through what makes this model different from traditional small business support programs?" Maya opened her portfolio and pulled out her prepared remarks, but then decided to speak from the heart instead. Congresswoman Williams, the key difference is that we start from a position of recognizing assets rather than deficits. Most programs for immigrants focus on what people lack: English skills, credit history, familiarity with American business practices. Our program focuses on what people bring: experience, innovation, determination, and strong work ethic. She gestured toward the gallery where her supporters were sitting. Mrs. Rodriguez, who's here today, came to this country with 20 years of experience running a catering business in El Salvador. Traditional lenders saw her lack of American credit history as disqualifying. We saw her 2 decades of experience as an asset and helped her access the capital she needed to rebuild her business here. Representative Tom Bradley, a conservative member from Ohio, leaned forward with a skeptical expression. Ms. Chun, while these individual success stories are heartwarming, I'm concerned about the broader economic impact. How do we ensure that supporting immigrant businesses doesn't disadvantage American-born entrepreneurs who are also struggling? Maya had anticipated this question and was ready with data. Representative Bradley, our research shows that immigrant-owned businesses create jobs at a higher rate than the general population. The 156 businesses launched through our program have created 847 new jobs, and 73% of those positions have been filled by American-born workers. She clicked to her next slide, which showed employment data broken down by demographic categories. Immigrant entrepreneurs don't take jobs away from others. They create opportunities for everyone. Maria Santos's restaurant employs 8 people, 6 of whom were born in the United States. Khalid Hassan's auto repair shop provides services that were previously unavailable in his neighborhood, creating value for the entire community. Representative Bradley nodded thoughtfully, but his expression remained cautious. What about the cost to taxpayers? How much public funding does this program require? Maya smiled, knowing this was her strongest argument. Actually, Congressman Bradley, our program operates at a net profit to taxpayers. The microloan fund has a 96% repayment rate, which is higher than most traditional small business lending. The businesses we support generate tax revenue that exceeds program costs within an average of 8 months. She pulled up a detailed financial analysis that her team had prepared. But beyond the direct financial return, there are significant cost savings in other areas. Participants in our program have lower unemployment rates, reduced reliance on social services, and higher rates of homeownership. When immigrant entrepreneurs succeed, entire communities benefit economically. Representative Sarah Kim from California, whose own parents had immigrated from Korea, asked about scalability. Ms. Chun, your program works well in Seattle, but every city has different demographics and economic conditions. How would you adapt this model for replication elsewhere? Maya had spent considerable time thinking about this question, knowing it would be crucial for national adoption. Representative Kim, the core principles remain the same across different contexts. Recognize existing assets, remove systemic barriers, provide targeted support, and measure outcomes rigorously. But the specific implementation varies based on local needs. She described how they had consulted with organizations in 12 other cities that were piloting adapted versions of the program. In Houston, there's greater focus on the energy sector because of the large population of Venezuelan engineers and geologists. In Detroit, the emphasis is on manufacturing and automotive expertise brought by Middle Eastern immigrants. The framework is flexible enough to leverage the specific strengths of different immigrant communities. The questions continued for nearly 2 hours, covering everything from legal challenges to outcome measurement to long-term sustainability. Maya found herself drawing not just on the data she had memorized, but on the stories of individual entrepreneurs whose lives have been transformed by the program. When Representative Williams finally called for closing statements, Maya stood and looked out at the room full of lawmakers, policy experts, and community advocates. 9 months ago, I was attacked by people who saw me as a threat to their version of America. They destroyed my belongings because they believed that immigrants like me were taking something that didn't belong to us. Today, I'm here to share data proving that immigrant entrepreneurs contribute billions of dollars to the American economy and create opportunities for everyone. Maya paused, thinking about the journey that had brought her from that sidewalk in Seattle to this hearing room in Washington. But the most important thing I've learned is that the American dream is not a zero-sum game. When we help one person succeed, we create space for others to succeed too. When we remove barriers for immigrant entrepreneurs, we strengthen the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem. She gestured toward Mrs. Rodriguez and the other supporters in the gallery. The people sitting behind me today came to America with the same dreams that have motivated generations of immigrants: the desire to work hard, build something meaningful, and create better opportunities for their children. Our program simply removes the unnecessary obstacles that prevent them from pursuing those fundamentally American aspirations. The hearing concluded with Representative Williams thanking Maya for her testimony and promising that the committee would seriously consider federal funding for pilot programs based on the Dreams Forward model. As Maya packed up her materials, she was surrounded by staff members and advocates who wanted to discuss potential collaborations and expansions. Dr. Martinez approached her as the room began to empty. "Maya, that was incredible testimony. You made the case both emotionally and intellectually. I think you've got real support building here." Maya smiled, but she was already thinking about the flight back to Seattle and the work waiting for her there. The national attention was gratifying, but the real impact happened at the local level, one entrepreneur at a time. That evening, Maya attended a reception hosted by the National Immigration Forum, where she met immigrant advocates and entrepreneurs from across the country. The story she heard reinforced her belief that the Dreams Forward model could be adapted to support diverse communities with different needs and strengths. She met Ahmed, a Sudanese refugee who had become a successful real estate developer in Minnesota. She talked with Isabella, a Brazilian engineer who had started a clean energy consulting firm in Colorado after struggling to get her credentials recognized. She listened to Carlos, a Mexican restaurant owner who had expanded from a single food truck to a chain of 12 locations across Texas. Each conversation revealed both the universal challenges facing immigrant entrepreneurs and the unique opportunities present in different regions and industries. Maya realized that the program she had helped create was just the beginning of what could become a national network of support for immigrant business development. The most moving moment of the evening came when Mrs. Rodriguez approached Maya near the end of the reception. The older woman was carrying a small wrapped package and had tears in her eyes. "Maya, I have something for you," Mrs. Rodriguez said, holding out the gift. "I made this myself, like the bag I brought to America 40 years ago." Maya unwrapped the package to find a small, beautifully crafted purse made from fabric that Mrs. Rodriguez had brought from El Salvador. It was similar in size to the evening purse that had been destroyed, but this one was filled with hopes that were already being realized rather than dreams that were still waiting. "Mrs. Rodriguez, this is beautiful, but I can't accept such a personal gift." The older woman shook her head firmly. "You gave me back my dreams when I thought they were gone forever. This bag is made from cloth that belonged to my grandmother, just like your leather bag was a gift from your grandmother. Now it carries new dreams forward." Maya hugged Mrs. Rodriguez, overwhelmed by the symbolism of the moment. The bag that had been destroyed represented her personal dreams and aspirations. This new bag represented the dreams of an entire community and the responsibility she felt to help others achieve their potential. As Maya walked back to her hotel that evening, carrying Mrs. Rodriguez's handmade purse, she reflected on how much had changed since that terrible Tuesday morning when her bags were destroyed on a Seattle sidewalk. She had started with a simple story about personal resilience and discovered that individual healing and community transformation were intimately connected. The teenagers who had attacked her had meant to send a message that she didn't belong, that her dreams were not valid, that her presence was unwelcome. Instead, They had accidentally launched a movement that was now being studied by policymakers, replicated in cities across the country, and providing opportunities for thousands of entrepreneurs who carried their own dreams in their own metaphorical bags. Maya realized that the most powerful response to hatred was not anger or revenge, but the creation of something beautiful and lasting that made the world more welcoming for others who face similar challenges. She had learned that sometimes the people who try to break us accidentally show us how strong we really are, and sometimes the worst moments of our lives become the foundation for the most meaningful chapters of our stories. But she also knew that this was just the beginning. The Dreams Forward initiative was proving that with the right support, immigrant entrepreneurs could thrive and contribute significantly to American economic growth. Now, the challenge was scaling that success and ensuring that the opportunities they had created in Seattle could be replicated in communities across the country. Maya Chun was ready for that challenge. She had learned that dreams are not things you carry alone, but things you build together with others who share your vision of what's possible. And she was committed to building a future where no one's bags would be destroyed simply for carrying dreams that were too big, too different, or too threatening to those who couldn't see beyond their own limitations. 2 years after her testimony in Washington, D.C., Maya stood in the largest conference room at the Seattle Convention Center, looking out at an audience of over 1,200 people who had gathered for the second annual National Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit. The event had grown far beyond anything she had imagined when the idea was first proposed by Dr. Martinez and a coalition of advocacy organizations. The summit brought together immigrant entrepreneurs, policymakers, investors, and community leaders from across the United States and Canada. What had started as the Dreams Forward initiative in Seattle had evolved into a national network of 47 cities implementing similar programs, with documented success stories numbering in the thousands. Maya adjusted the microphone and smiled as she recognized familiar faces in the crowd. Mrs. Rodriguez sat in the front row, now the proud owner of 2 successful restaurants and a published cookbook. Her success story had been featured in Food and Wine magazine, and she had become a sought-after speaker at business conferences across the country. Beside her sat Ahmad, who had completed his engineering recertification and now ran a consulting firm that helped other professionals navigate credential recognition processes. In the third row, Maya spotted Lin Wei, whose tech consulting company had recently been acquired by a Fortune 500 corporation for $38 million. Lin had used part of the proceeds to establish a venture capital fund specifically focused on immigrant-led startups, and she was scheduled to speak later that afternoon about access to investment capital. But it wasn't just the success stories that filled Maya with pride as she looked out at the audience. It was the diversity of the crowd, the energy in the room, and the sense that they were part of something that was fundamentally changing how America thought about immigration and entrepreneurship. 2 years ago, Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system. Many of you were sitting in small classrooms and community centers wondering if your business ideas would ever become reality. Today, you represent over $2.4 billion in economic impact and more than 15,000 jobs created. But those numbers, as impressive as they are, tell only part of the story. Maya clicked to her first slide, which showed a collage of photos from Dreams Forward programs across the country. There were images of ribbon-cutting ceremonies, graduation celebrations, family gatherings, and community events that showcase the human side of entrepreneurial success. The real story is about transformation, not just of individual lives, but of entire communities. When Maria Santos opened her restaurant, she didn't just create 8 jobs. She created a gathering place where neighbors from different backgrounds come together over shared meals. When Khalid Hassan expanded his auto repair shop, he didn't just provide better service. He created a model for how businesses can serve as community anchors. The audience nodded and applauded, but Maya could see that many people were particularly interested in the policy updates she was about to share. The success of local programs had generated significant political momentum, and She had just returned from meetings with federal agencies about potential national legislation. This year, I'm excited to announce several major developments that will expand opportunities for immigrant entrepreneurs nationwide. Maya continued, moving to her next slide. The Small Business Administration has approved $50 million in funding for microloan programs specifically designed for immigrant-owned businesses. The Department of Commerce has launched a national credential recognition initiative that will help skilled immigrants get their qualifications validated more quickly. And just last week, the House of Representatives passed the Immigrant Entrepreneur Support Act, which creates tax incentives for investors who fund immigrant-led startups. The room erupted in applause, and Maya had to wait several minutes for the excitement to die down before continuing. She knew that behind the celebration were thousands of individual stories of people who had struggled with bureaucratic barriers, discriminatory lending practices, and systemic obstacles that made entrepreneurship unnecessarily difficult for newcomers. But perhaps the most important change has been in how we talk about immigration and entrepreneurship, Maya said, her voice growing more serious. We've moved beyond the false narrative that portrays immigration as a zero-sum game, where one person's success comes at another person's expense. We've demonstrated that immigrant entrepreneurship creates opportunities for everyone and strengthens the entire economic ecosystem. Maya's presentation continued with detailed case studies from different cities, highlighting how the Dreams Forward model had been adapted to leverage the specific strengths of various immigrant communities. In Miami, the program focused on connecting Latin American entrepreneurs with international markets. In Detroit, Middle Eastern immigrants were revitalizing manufacturing districts with innovative approaches to production and design. In Minneapolis, Somali entrepreneurs were creating supply chains that connected local farmers with urban restaurants and food distributors. Each adaptation proved that the program's success wasn't dependent on replicating exactly what had worked in Seattle, but on applying core principles while remaining flexible enough to respond to local conditions and opportunities. During the lunch break, Maya was approached by Jennifer Walsh, a documentary filmmaker who had been following the Dreams Forward movement for over a year. Jennifer was working on a feature-length film about immigrant entrepreneurship that would premiere at the Sundance Film Festival the following January. Maya, I wanted to let you know that we just finished editing the final version of the documentary, Jennifer said, pulling out her tablet to show Maya the movie poster. We're calling it Bags of Dreams, the Maya Chun story, but really it's about all the entrepreneurs whose lives have been transformed by this movement. Maya looked at the poster, which featured a striking image of hands holding various bags, briefcases, purses, backpacks, shopping bags, filled with light that seemed to be spilling out onto the ground. The tagline read, "When they destroyed her bags, she helped an entire nation rebuild the American dream." I'm honored that you've chosen to tell this story, Maya said, though she felt slightly uncomfortable with the focus on her personal experience rather than the collective achievement of thousands of entrepreneurs. I hope the film emphasizes that this has never been about one person. It's been about communities coming together to create opportunities for everyone. Jennifer nodded enthusiastically. That's exactly what we've tried to capture. Your story is the thread that connects everything, but the real stars are the entrepreneurs who took risks, built businesses, and proved that the American dream is still alive and accessible to people who are willing to work for it. The afternoon sessions focused on practical workshops and networking opportunities. Maya moved between different rooms, observing discussions about everything from digital marketing strategies to supply chain management to investor relations. The level of sophistication in the conversations impressed her. These were no longer immigrants seeking basic business advice. These were experienced entrepreneurs sharing advanced strategies and insights with each other. In one workshop, she listened as Carlos Martinez, the Mexican restaurant owner she had met in Washington 2 years earlier, explained how he had used data analytics to optimize his expansion strategy. His chain now included 28 locations across 3 states, and he was planning to franchise the concept nationwide. In another session, Isabella Rodriguez, the Brazilian clean energy consultant, was leading a discussion about international business development. Her company had recently signed contracts with solar energy projects in 6 countries, and she was sharing lessons about navigating different regulatory environments and cultural expectations. Maya realized that many of the program participants have become mentors and leaders in their own right, creating a multiplier effect that extended the program's impact far beyond the original scope. They were hiring other immigrants, investing in their communities, and serving as role models for the next generation of entrepreneurs. The day's final presentation was delivered by Dr. Sarah Kim, an economics professor at Georgetown University who had conducted an independent study of the Dreams Forward initiative's economic impact. Her findings were remarkable, even to Maya, who had watched the program grow from the beginning. Over the past 3 years, Dr. Kim explained, businesses launched through Dreams Forward programs have generated $2.4 billion in economic activity, created 15,247 direct jobs, and an estimated 31,000 indirect jobs. But the ripple effects extend far beyond these immediate measures. Dr. Kim clicked to a slide showing neighborhood-level economic data. In communities where Dreams Forward programs operate, we've seen increases in property values, reductions in unemployment rates, and growth in other small businesses. Immigrant entrepreneurs don't just create their own success. They revitalize entire districts and create opportunities for their neighbors. The data also showed significant social benefits that were harder to quantify, but equally important. Communities with active immigrant entrepreneur programs reported higher levels of cross-cultural interaction, reduced incidents of hate crimes, and increased civic participation among both immigrant and native-born residents. What we're seeing, Dr. Kim concluded, is that economic integration and social integration reinforce each other. When immigrants succeed economically, they become more engaged in their communities. When communities welcome and support immigrant entrepreneurs, everyone benefits from the economic growth and cultural richness that results. As the summit drew to a close, Maya found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The attack that had seemed so devastating 3 years earlier now felt like a catalyst that had unlocked potential she hadn't even known existed. The anger and humiliation she had felt on that Seattle sidewalk had been transformed into purpose and determination that had impacted thousands of lives. During the closing ceremony, Maya was joined on stage by 12 entrepreneurs whose businesses had been launched through Dreams Forward programs. Together, they represented the diversity of the immigrant experience in America. Refugees and voluntary immigrants, highly educated professionals, and skilled tradespeople, people from every continent and dozens of countries. Mrs. Rodriguez stepped forward to speak on behalf of the group. 3 years ago, Maya taught us that our dreams were not destroyed by the people who try to break us. Today, we want to teach others that dreams shared become dreams multiplied. What we have built together is stronger than what any of us could have built alone. The entrepreneurs then presented Maya with a gift that left her speechless. A handcrafted bag made from fabric contributed by each of their families. Pieces of sari silk from India were woven together with Kent cloth from Ghana, embroidered cotton from Mexico, and wool from Ireland. The bag was beautiful, but more importantly, it represented the collective dreams and shared success of an entire community. This bag carries all of our dreams forward, Mrs. Rodriguez explained. And we know that you will use it to help others carry their dreams too. Maya hugged each of the entrepreneurs, overwhelmed by their generosity and the symbolism of the moment. The bag they had given her was nothing like the 3 bags that had been destroyed 3 years earlier. Those bags had held her individual dreams and aspirations. This bag represented a collective movement that was changing how America thought about immigration, entrepreneurship, and community. As the summit concluded and people began to leave, Maya stood in the empty conference room, holding her new bag and thinking about what came next. The Dreams Forward network was established and growing. Federal legislation was creating new opportunities for expansion. Documentary films and academic studies were spreading awareness of the program's success. But Maya knew that the real measure of success wouldn't be found in policy changes or media coverage. It would be found in the lives of individual entrepreneurs who found the courage to pursue their dreams despite facing obstacles and discrimination. It would be found in the communities that became more welcoming and prosperous because they embraced the contributions of newcomers. It would be found in the children who grew up seeing entrepreneurship as a path to success rather than an impossible dream. Maya Chun had learned that sometimes the people who try to destroy us accidentally give us the greatest gifts of our lives. The teenagers who attacked her had meant to send a message that she didn't belong, that her dreams were invalid, that immigrants like her were unwelcome. Instead, they had forced her to discover a strength and purpose she hadn't known she possessed. She had learned that individual healing and community transformation were not separate processes, but part of the same larger work of building a more just and inclusive society. She had discovered that the most powerful response to hatred was not anger or revenge, but the creation of something beautiful and lasting that made the world better for others who face similar challenges. Most importantly, Maya had realized that the American dream was not something you achieved alone, but something you built together with others who shared your vision of what was possible. The bag she now carried was filled not just with her own hopes and aspirations, but with the collective dreams of thousands of entrepreneurs who had found the courage to build something meaningful despite facing significant obstacles. As Maya walked out of the convention center and into the Seattle evening, she thought about all the bags that would be packed with business plans and hope in the months and years to come. She thought about the success stories that would emerge from communities across the country. She thought about the children who would grow up in a world where their parents' entrepreneurial dreams were supported rather than destroyed. The movement that had started with 3 destroyed bags had become a national network that was changing laws, transforming communities, and proving that the American dream was still alive for anyone willing to work for it. And Maya Chin knew that this was just the beginning. The bags they had destroyed that day on a Seattle sidewalk had carried one person's dreams. The movement they had accidentally inspired was now carrying the dreams of an entire generation of immigrants who refused to let fear and prejudice define their possibilities. Sometimes destruction is just the clearing away of what was to make room for what's meant to be. Sometimes the worst day of your life becomes the first day of your real purpose. And sometimes the bags they destroy become the foundation for carrying dreams bigger than anything you could have ever imagined.